So in this video, we're going to talk about the non sequitur logical fallacy. So this is similar to the red herring, but there's a distinction. Right, so the red herring is when an argument is put together or challenged by something that is related but isn't actually connected to the point that's being made. A non sequitur has even less of a connection to the argument. So basically, a non sequitur, the term in Latin, means something like it does not follow. Yeah, it's a fallacy of irrelevance, basically. But the big difference between a red herring and a non sequitur, I would say, is that a red herring, because it's still connected to the issue at hand, is meant to throw you off the scent. That's what the term red herring refers to, is this idea that this very smelly fish could be used to throw tracking dogs in the wrong direction or to disrupt a scent while dogs were tracking it. A non sequitur is simply unconnected. It's not even really meant to direct you to a different facet of an argument. It's simply there to be disruptive, essentially. And so in this sense, it's pretty obvious why this is a logical fallacy. It literally has nothing to do with the argument at hand. So to try and illustrate this, I'm gonna take the three examples from Annette T. Rottenberg and Donna Hasty-Winchell's The Structure of Argument, because I think they're reasonably good ones. So one example that they give is this little delightful cartoon here. So in the first panel, the guy is thinking, a corporation laid me off. Second panel, guy is thinking a corporation took my house. Third panel, corporate cash is corrupting democracy. Fourth panel, a corporation denied my claim. That's a medical claim. Fifth panel, corporations track my every move. Sixth panel, I hate the fucking government. So this is a pretty good one, in fact. This sort of idea, this is a very common one in the US in particular. We have this notion that even though a lot of the ills in our society can be directly traced to the activity of corporations, that somehow this is the government's fault. I would put in there a kind of similar thing. We have this bizarre, paradoxical attitude often in the US where the Republican Party will do horrendously evil things, and people will be like, the Democrats are bad because they didn't stop them. It's like the Democrats haven't done the thing. The thing itself is the problem. The thing that's bad is the problem. And rather than blaming the people who have done the bad thing, you're blaming a different group who didn't do that bad thing for that bad thing happening. That, I would say, is a non sequitur, right? It doesn't follow from this thing is bad, it shouldn't have happened. It is a complete missing of who is actually at fault there. So that's one. Another one that they give in Structure of Argument is this passage from an advertisement for a book, Worlds in Collision, whose theories about the origins of the Earth and evolutionary development have been challenged by almost all reputable scientists, states, here we go, once rejected as preposterous, critics called it an outrage. It aroused incredible antagonism in scientific and literary circles, yet 500,000 copies were sold, and for 27 years it remained an outstanding bestseller. This is a thing that we often see in pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-archaeology, etc., is basically, it's an ad populum appeal, this sort of sense of like, well, scientists have offered evidence that we're wrong, but a lot of people believe my stupid bullshit. that sort of thing. Like, and this is part of the problem with the ad populum approach, right? And in this case, it is directly, it's a form of non sequitur. If your argument is that I'm correct in my stupid bullshit nonsense theory, then people believe it is a non sequitur. It simply doesn't follow. It's not a way of establishing the correctness of the argument that you're making. Whether or not people like it is irrelevant. There's a famous anecdote that Einstein's response to a book in which I forget what it was. It was something like a book where 100 scientists argued that Einstein's theories were wrong. And Einstein's response was something like, if my theories were wrong, then one would have been sufficient. So this idea that, like, in this case, something like what is correct, what is true, or what the evidence tells us is not dependent on popularity, right? So we get these kinds of things. And then the last one that they give us in this textbook is a June 2010 statement by Barack Obama, who said, "After all, oil is a finite resource. We consume more than 20% of the world's oil, but have less than 2% of the world's oil reserves." What the book says is this is a non sequitur because the relevant relationship would be between the U.S. percentage of world population, not oil reserves, and the U.S. percentage of world oil consumption. Though I think even if you break the numbers down by that, we still consume vastly more oil than our relevant per capita portion of the population here in the US. But nonetheless, the connection between this one thing and this other thing is not the important connection, right? It doesn't tell you whether or not we're using more oil than we should be based on our share of the world's oil. Right? And we see this kind of thing all the time, right? Where a particular metric is applied within an argument that doesn't actually support the argument that's being made, but it's presented as though it does. And this is a big problem, right? And so what you always want to be thinking about as a writer and as a critical listener or reader of arguments is the point that's being made here actually supporting the claim that's being made? Or is this something that's irrelevant? And sometimes that can be hard to distinguish, but you want to be skeptical and you want to be critical of those, of arguments and trying to figure out, is this actually supporting what the person claims it's supporting?